Welcome to Deeper with Darshana, where we skip the small talk and dive down into what's raw and real. Pleasure, shame, justice, power, healing, liberation. These essential aspects of our human experience are among my favorite topics to explore, and I'm inviting you to join me. I'm your host, Darshana Avila, somatic sex and trauma expert and creator of the Erotic Wholeness Method. It is my belief that we are erotic by nature, and our erotic nature encompasses so much more than you might realize. Come along as I drop into curious conversations with other passionate pros and sensual seekers, and occasionally share musings of my own. Bring your curiosity, your sacred, messy, beautiful humanity, and all the parts of yourself. And let's go deeper together. I think it's safe to say that if you're here with me listening to this podcast, you care a lot about the quality of your intimacy, the kind of sex that you're having, feeling just really lit up in your lovemaking. And yet, it might also be a possibility, maybe a strong one, that you don't totally know how to create that for yourself. We all have a very narrow script that has been handed to us in the dominant culture that tells us sex is A and B. And today I'm getting into a conversation with two colleagues of mine, Rahi Chun and Ariel Szabo, who are a couple as well as teachers together in addition to their private practices. And they have a body of work called Divine Union for Lovers that focuses on extended lovemaking, expanded lovemaking, how we can become so much more creative and present and attuned, whether that's with ourselves or with a partner. I love the conversation that I had with the two of them, and I know that you are going to as well. Rahi and Ariel, like I said, they are colleagues of mine as sex educators, sexological body workers. Ariel also brings in a background of working with psychedelics and plant medicine. They are lovely human beings with a ton of wisdom to share. So get yourselves ready for a delightful interview, and I will see you on the other side. Thanks for being here with Deeper with Darshana. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Welcome back to Deeper with Darshana. Today, I am joined with two colleagues of mine, Rahi and Ariel, who together are doing a beautiful body of work in partnership and professionally, focused on divine union and extended lovemaking. And I'm really excited to get into that conversation. Rahi and Ariel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Darshana. This is terrific.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to start with something that might be even a little bit of a curveball for you, because which is, I remember a teacher of mine in the early days of me studying sacred sexuality and getting into this field, very clearly telling me, don't teach with your partners. And she said that was the secret to her decades-long teaching career at that point in time.
Oh.
I wonder if she had an experience teaching with a partner and what happened.
I do too. And I have done it and I have not done it. So I'm so curious just to have you share a little bit about how the two of you came to this offering. And I know that it involves, like I said, both personal and professional weaving.
Mm-hmm. You want to start?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great question to start with, Darshana, because I've heard people say that as well. For us, in our experience, it really feels like we have such a shared purpose and a shared service of making sacred sexuality available, practical, and really like viscerally changing lives, that we came together with we were kind of doing it on our own. And when we came together, I just feel like our lovemaking and the expansion of consciousness that happened as a result of our lovemaking it was like this medicine needs to be shared. It's almost like we were just like vessels or channels for this information and wisdom to come through us. And our course, Divine Union for Lovers, was really just, it just was a direct transmission from our lovemaking. Mm-hmm. And so it feels to me like we're kind of like, our offering is kind of like one vessel. I don't consider it like two separate people coming together to try to make it work. It's like it wanted to be birthed through our union.
Yeah, like one of the purposes of why we even came together is to do this work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That reminds me of other friends of mine who have had channeled a body of work and have been facilitating that for many years, and they speak of it very similarly, where it's like the we is what was needed as the vessel, not one half of that, but something that is bigger than the parts themselves. So,
yeah. I want to say, the very first time we got to experience a collaboration was the couples cacao ceremony, where we had 3 couples here, and we had an outline. This was way before we created Divine Union for Lovers, and the way that experience unfolded, it was almost like like a baton handoff. The way we were holding space and building and enhancing what the other person's like insights and space holding, and so. I mean, that was such an ecstatic experience for me. I was like, wow, what else can we do together?
Yeah. Yeah. And as I think the question points to, is it's not without its challenges. Like, I think we find that we have to be diligent about holding boundaries around, like, because our work and our personal life are so intertwined. So it's like, okay, let's stop talking about work. But it's also sometimes, like, every Friday we have love labs. So we dedicate the day to making love, and it's, it's our personal nourishment. It's a way we tend to our relationship, but it's also part of our practice of our work in the world. And it's a lot of where our discoveries come from. So like, we might like discover something and be like, oh, we got to teach this. But it's also like, okay, we got to stop talking about work right now.
Well, I'm backing up to just say how gorgeous that you have Friday Love Labs with each other. Like, what a beautiful commitment and investment to your relationship, never mind your work in the world. I mean, I think we all know as professionals, I will speak for myself with a hunch that you'll agree. Like, when clients come to me and they want to know, like, how do we focus on intimacy more? I'm like, well, the first thing is you actually have to schedule it. As unsexy as that sounds, time held and honored as sacred is the foundation, right? What you do inside of that time can have a tremendous range, but the time itself, the container needs to be created. Anything that you want to say about that from your professional or personal experience with it?
Yeah, I mean, what we found, to your point, not only prioritizing it, but when we have nothing scheduled in an entire day, the spaciousness allows for what's deep underneath, whether it's, emotional metabolizing that needs to arise from a disagreement from a few days ago, or, maybe it's an individual experience that's come up and needs space holding. Like, that spaciousness, Darshana, is it just allows for so many unforeseeable things to come up and be held and to be seen and to be met and to be made love to. So I really, we make love during, we snuggle at the end of the night and do other things, but just having that whole day open for intimacy has been very, very profound.
Yeah. And I know certainly for myself, like, we might have different pockets during the week of like an hour to be with our bodies and each other's bodies, but my body can really unfold and open into like ecstasy and new experiences when there's hours available to do so, right? Because there's like a subtle softening that can only happen with time and knowing that there is time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm for those listening who are like, yeah, fantastic. Great. You can spend a whole day. I'm taking care of you, dear listener, because we know that not everyone's reality easily allows for that, especially if you are actively parenting for, and you've got kids in the home, or you work outside of the home and have a schedule that you're beholden to. And so given that this is where we found ourselves in the conversation, I'm curious what you would suggest and guide for people who may not have the degree of spaciousness that the two of you are describing, but how that spaciousness can be created. Basically, like, how do you work with what you've got? you know?
Yeah. So like, even if it's like just an hour that you can create some evening, some week, but really tending to making the most out of that hour. So having some rituals that bring you into presence so that you can actually meet each other as deeply as possible with the time you have. And, you know, maybe the ritual is like sitting in a particular place that you always sit in before that hour and naming your intentions, doing a few minutes of breathing and meditating together to let go of the day. You know, a way that's really worked for us when our minds are really active and we're having trouble kind of settling into our space together is like taking turns asking for one-way touch, like, hey, I'd like you to, you know, caress my arms, and start with a 3-minute trade, then go to a 5-minute trade, then go to a 10-minute trade. And like pretty quickly with an exercise like that, I find that I'm able to like quiet the monkey mind and come into presence.
But I want to underscore, like, because time is a reality for, you know, people parenting, as you mentioned, replacing the quantity of time with a ritualistic, like, way to honor, hey, we're prioritizing our intimacy and our connection. You know, like I've seen couples because they don't, even if they can't find an hour because they're caretaking for parents and they got kids downstairs, just taking 10 minutes a day. But the ritual really prioritizes it. And then, you know, they find that, oh, you know, I'd rather, you know, spend an afternoon than go to a baseball game. Like that prioritization switches something, it moves it up the list.
Yeah.
Okay, I can sacrifice this because this is really important to us.
Right. And I mean, it's my experience that the word sacrifice even becomes a relative term there, or a subjective term, right? Because we all are constantly choosing what we're allocating our time, our energy, our attention to. And there are certain things that maybe are non-negotiables, like the caretaking and the earning a living. And then there's like, what do I actually do with what space remains? And it is an inquiry that, especially I know when over the years of working with couples, like when I've got two people sitting in front of me that are just like, well, yeah, you know, it's been 3 weeks and we don't have 10 minutes together. And I'm like, that's a choice, you know? So, and this is not a make wrong so much as an invitation to anybody listening. Like if you resonate with that experience of, I don't have enough time, like quality over quantity. And what you just named at the end there, Rahi, that it actually like can become such a fulfilling experience, even if it's not a long duration, because we're getting nourished by the ritual, the presence that's being shared. And so this feels like we're starting down a conversation, maybe a list of like the things that you consider essential or key to really growing erotic aliveness in partnership. So what are some of the other things that you are finding are really important for people to prioritize?
Well, I feel like to piggyback on prioritizing time, you know, what we find is a lot of people who can't seem to find that time or prioritization. There's something within them or one person that's too afraid to face. And so in answer to your question, Darshana, like when we work with couples, we really encourage them. I mean, one, we take an inventory of their sexual history, but really getting real as to what fears or what shadow aspects are really coming up around the vulnerability of intimacy, of expanding into emotional unknown spaces that may be bringing up childhood wounds that they've never even known about, much less addressed.
Yeah, so it's nervous system tending then, and it's like a psychosomatic journey. And it, you know, it makes me think of, as an individual, like I've gone through chapters of my life where sitting down for a seated silent meditation is like the most delicious, welcome thing. And then other moments where I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to crawl out of my skin inside of 10 seconds. And I'm just like, you know, and I think all of us have our cycles and seasons and experiences with that. And I think a lot of people find it surprising then to have a similar experience of intimacy, right? Because we have so much social conditioning. It's like, sex, you're supposed to want sex. You're supposed to have sex. Go have sex, 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 sex. Mm-hmm. But this is about more than sex. We've used this word intimacy, each of us, multiple times now. Like, there's more going on there, and that vulnerability that you just spoke to is a part of it. So how are some of the ways that you help people lean into that and actually be able to access the goodness on the other side?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things is for each person to get really real about what are they desiring. Mm-hmm. And that can be so hard to even admit to yourself what you're desiring. And I think a mindset that can be helpful is to have an openness and knowing that things are always changing. So our bodies, our desires, our needs are going to be constantly shifting throughout our life, and what we like and what we want. And knowing that for ourselves and knowing that for our partners, because I think there can also be so much shame that comes in and makes it hard for us to access our own desires or stay open to hearing someone else's desires. But just knowing desires always shift and move. So we're going to always need to be attuning to, well, what are they right now? What are your desires right now? What are mine? And where can we meet each other in those desires?
Mm-hmm. I think for that reason, like, you know, we really focus on the art of attuning, you know, with ourselves as well as with each other, because moment by moment, we want to give the space and permission for things to shift, for things to change. You know, a yes, you know, a consensual yes 10 minutes ago can change after 10 minutes. So we really want, you know, I mean, the 8 pillars of intimacy really are really about attunement, like teaching couples and individuals the art of self-attuning and attuning to others.
Okay. 2 things I want to pull out. Love that you spoke about the art of attunement, because like any artistic talent, let's say, that can be cultivated then. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times there's this notion, oh, this person is attuned. And it's like some God-given, innately present like quality that they have. And then this person is not attuned, which I definitely push back on. So the fact that you speak of it as an art, and you mentioned these 8 pillars of intimacy, I'd love to hear you flesh those 2 things out. What are those 8 pillars, and what are some of the practical steps to mastering this art of attunement that people who are listening might be able to start like conceptualizing for themselves?
Yeah. So the pillars are really all the skills, the internal capacities that we can practice with ourselves, in each other, that help us develop attunement.
Okay, perfect.
It's like the capacity of slowing down, mm-hmm. of pausing long enough so you can notice what's even happening, accepting what's happening, right? So many of us will be like, I don't like what's happening, so I'm going to push this away. I'm going to pretend something else is true.
Right. And notice you said accepting, not agreeing, not liking. You don't have to like it, but it's like,
right.
Like this is what's
okay. Right, right. This is what's true right now. Yeah. And then trusting it and valuing it enough to like, to do something with it. Mm-hmm. And all of these add up to allowing to attune. Like I think of attunement is a moment to moment responsiveness to whatever is happening internally, externally, to the space between us.
Yeah.
So like there's all these like pillars of slowing down, of pausing, of accepting, trusting, valuing. And they're all really building blocks to learn how to attune, you know, because they're all necessary to get to the place of attunement.
Yeah.
And then the 8th pillar is actually communicating all of this attunement that you've been building to the capacity to really hold, and then you can communicate that to your partner.
Yeah. And I'm realizing it's possible that somebody might be listening to this going like, what the hell is attunement? So maybe that's worth defining or I don't know, like it almost feels a little ineffable to define it, but we can speak to the kinds of experiences we have of attunement. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. So, I'm a very visual person. So when I think of like a body of water, um, when I'm attuning to the body of water, I'm noticing where it's coming from and where it's going. So I'm not just noticing that it's there.
Right. But you're
Um,
tracking the movement, the directionality, yeah, the
yeah.
speed it goes at, yeah.
Right. So when I'm attuning to maybe an emotion moving through me, thinking of the emotion like water, okay, I'm attuning to like where's this emotion coming from? What kind of like triggered the emotion? Um, where is it wanting to go? Like perhaps how is it wanting to move through my body? Or how is it wanting to express through my words? Um, what is the emotion asking of me? What does it need right now to allow itself to be fully here, which is like accepting it and trusting it and valuing it enough to allow it to like take up space and receive what it's asking for.
Right. Yeah. So I'm hearing presence and I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing responsiveness, being
Yeah.
responsive to what is here in the present.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add like feeling into, like feeling into the body of water that's shifting moment to moment, feeling into the body of emotions of your partner, or the body of sensations that's evolving moment to moment.
Right. Yeah. Because our bodies are continually presenting information, giving signposts, go this way, not that way. And I think many of us are very accustomed to simply overriding those within ourselves and not knowing how to track them in another person if we can't track it in ourselves. But that slowing down piece is so critical to it then, to really notice those small and subtle shifts, the flush of somebody's face, where their eye gaze is going, tension or relaxation in the body, like things that when you start to pay attention really do point you in, okay, this is the attuned direction. I won't say right direction, but the attuned direction to move in. That's beautiful.
Yeah, we're such dynamic organisms, like and moment to moment, everything's always changing. I mean, that's the nature of nature and the nature of our nature. So to really travel and journey along with those shifts is in itself very intimate.
Yeah. Yeah, it is indeed. Okay, so things that I've heard named so far: identifying needs, identifying desires, presence, attunement, creating space. Like, what else goes into just the foundation building of how we come toward claiming our own sexual aliveness, expanding that capacity and that connection in a partnership? What else is in the mix for this divine union approach?
Well, I would say there's there's two things I want to touch upon. There's all of that, but then there's also, something when we work with couples, we want each other to take an inventory of each other's sexual history. And that's not to, like go through the past with a fine tooth comb, but it's to understand each other's nervous system responses to intimacy, to orgasm, to sexual expansion, so everyone's on the same page of understanding like how this nervous system responds and what the history, particularly if there's trauma, so that there can be, going back to the pillars, the slowing down and the pausing. That's absolutely critical and essential. When a hypervigilance or a fight flight or something happens in the nervous system where they can no longer attune.
Right. And then it can, like, if one person gets triggered, the other person can have an easier time not taking it personally. If there's an awareness of like, oh, I know what's coming up for this person, it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I mean, and I've experienced it both ways, which is to say, I've had moments of triggers arising in a shared experience where the other person actually didn't know a whole lot of detail about my background, and I've had it the opposite. And hands down, it goes way better for everybody involved when we are informed and when we act, to your point, like that we can take it less personally, because it's that reactivity of like, ooh, I've done something wrong, you don't like how I'm doing it, that then we're like ping ponging the activation, the trauma, the upset, the disconnection, as opposed to one person having their experience and the other, in a best case scenario, having the capacity and having that context to say, okay, I see this for what it is. I know how I can be of support, and I do not have to make this a story about I've done something wrong here, which is what a tremendous gift to a relationship when that type of capacity and skill has been created.
It really is. And then, you know, in those moments, if that's possible, to rather than ping pong, for the person to like hold the other person while they're triggered, that can actually be a beautiful moment to deepen intimacy together. And even if you're like in a moment of lovemaking, to bring pleasure to the part that's activated, that's triggered, that wounded, and use the lovemaking, use the pleasure to like really bring healing to this wounded part.
Yeah, it really re-imprints and reconditions a new story and association with the trigger and the nervous system dysregulation, so that, I mean, it creates a new neural pathway in a somatic response, and that's what we're going for.
Yeah, and I want to like, I'm gonna dumb down the wording a little there. I'm sure I could come up with a better phrase than that, but that's what just flew out of my mouth. The new neural pathway, the new imprint. It's like so many of us are, unbeknownst to ourselves, unbeknownst to our partners, we're just playing out the script, if you will, of that familiar pathway, that familiar, here's how A to B goes. And when we get to introduce a new experience like what you're describing, where a trigger arises and it's met with presence and even pleasure, like what a tremendous healing opportunity that becomes. And I think about all the potential that could give rise to on the other side, in so much as like, oh, I didn't know I could have this experience. I didn't know I liked this thing. I didn't know that pain could be transmuted into pleasure. Like there's just so much richness that arises from those moments when it's well held.
Yeah, so much richness. And that gets to in answer to the question that you posed earlier is, yes, there's identifying where we are at in terms of our sexual desires, needs. There's the understanding of our history and of our nervous systems, but then there's also the expansion and exploration of new skills that inform and educate us about our partner's erogenous areas, what their likes and dislikes are, and how to expand that capacity for arousal and pleasure. So much so, you know, with breathing, nervous system regulation, and so much so that you can really, you know, make love for as long or as short or as intensely or as, you know, gracefully as you desire. So that's the other piece.
Okay, so when I hear the phrase, or a similar phrase like extended lovemaking, there is a place in my brain that goes back to, however, I'm going to date myself here, Sting and Trudy Styler, right? Like when it was like all the rage, like they have tantric sex for hours and hours, and it's in the tabloids. And it's like, and let's demystify this a little bit. When you speak of extended lovemaking and making love and having sex for hours and hours and hours, if you were almost giving a little bit of a play-by-play, can you help describe for someone who might have no context, like what are we actually talking about here? Are we talking about marathon penis and vagina intercourse, or are we getting a little more creative than that?
Yeah. So I think there's layers, but I'll start with kind of like the most zoomed out layer, which I think is shifting the paradigm about what even is sex. What does it look like?
Yeah.
Because, you know, the media, pornography, the dictionary definitions of sex tell us that sex is penis in vagina penetration.
Yep.
And what we're really inviting is a is a shift in like moving away from this goal-oriented performative paradigm where it's just about penetration, to really focusing on, instead of performance, let's focus on presence. Shifting the goal from climax over to connection. And really expanding what is sex and what do you do while you're having sex. I mean, penetration is wonderful and there is so much else available. And then also expanding our body's capacity to hold erotic charge. So that can look like then having the capacity to maintain erotic charge for hours and hours. It can also just look like having the capacity to experience more pleasure and new sensations of pleasure than you've ever discovered before, whether it happens within a 10-minute period or a 2-hour period.
Yeah. So when you talk about that, like the holding an erotic charge for multiple hours, does that mean that you are at a certain height and peak arousal that whole time? Or is it more about being able to dip in and out of it? Like for especially as somebody who is perhaps maybe newer on their journey to coming home to their own body, to resensitizing their body, to growing that capacity. It's like, what might somebody expect from a prolonged lovemaking experience?
So it might be helpful, and I want to address the play-by-play. It might be helpful to bring in the pleasure scale. So if you're at a pleasure scale of 0 to 10, and 10 is climax, then understanding, and this goes back to attunement and the importance self-attunement plays, and also attuning to where your partner is on that pleasure scale.
Yeah.
Right? So another way of saying extended lovemaking can be, as Ariel mentioned, extended erotic charge, right? Or extended intimate connection. And if you frame it that way, the lovemaking can be penetrative. It can be with with your mouths. It can be with your hands. It could be so many ways. But the erotic charge is really the constant. And so the play-by-play, you know, it could be starting with caressing, and the arousal builds up to a 4 or 5. And then if you bring in, you know, organically, if the hands want to come in, or the mouth, or, we're really big on non-penetrative lovemaking, but also involving the genitalia. So the genitals may be engaged in any, kinds of configurations that heighten and play with the erotic charge from like a 6 to an 8, but refraining from penetration, which just builds up the erotic charge.
Yeah.
And then when there is penetration, it could travel anywhere between a 7 and a 9. And, we have this expression of riding the 9s. We love riding the 9s, but not having it dip over into a 10. And if it does, it's beautiful too. But that could go on for hours, and then, we have to eat and go to the bathroom. And then when we get back into bed, it can pick up where it left off. So it can actually, go on for days, if not weeks.
Yeah.
But I think this is going to look different for everybody.
Yes.
And people will ride waves of arousal, reaching different points on the arousal scale. And I notice a lot of people actually don't have much experience luxuriating in low to medium states of arousal, because there is this culture that's so focused on climax.
Right. We just get on that escalator and we ride it to the top.
So there's so much richness in really exploring and allowing the body to kind of just like really learn, what is it like to stay between a 2 to a 4, and then maybe go more medium range, like 5, 6, 7. There's so much available in every place from 0 to 10.
Yeah.
And I think something that's really important in what Ariel's bringing up is, something that we're really interested in is decoupling higher arousal with higher states of nervous system upregulation. So by exploring those lower states of arousal, the 2 to 4, but so in repairing or recoupling higher states of arousal or lower states of arousal with a deeply downregulated nervous system seems to expand the body's capacity to hold erotic charge. And that's something we're very interested in.
Yeah, I mean, in my work, I think we do point towards similar things. I talk about that as relaxed arousal.
Yes.
So a foundation of relaxation and receptivity in the nervous system actually lets you access a much more fulfilling and prolonged and sustained and even higher level of sexual arousal and turn on and pleasure. And if you are riding that wave to the point of climax, oftentimes a far more expansive experience of what a climax can be. And it's all because we started out with a really well-tended nervous system that felt that soft openness and wasn't armed up against potential threat, but really in that allowing state. And so I think that's a very similar thing to what I'm hearing you describe.
Yeah.
And something, I mean, I know, Rahi, among the things that certainly I think of you professionally for is you do a lot of work around de-armoring. And I'm curious how that connects in with what we're talking about here. Maybe you could define what de-armoring is and talk a little bit about, for especially those of us who might experience dissociation or numbness or just feel like our level of sensation, maybe, on a scale of 1 to 10, never really gets beyond a 2 or a 3. Like, how does that come into play individually, partnered, relating? Yeah, because I think that that's probably stuff a lot of folks are struggling with. Is like, this all sounds great, but like, I barely feel responsive, or I don't have sensitivity.
Yeah, sure. I always say in the course I teach, the 3 Keys to Genital De-armoring, that the best and most effective way to de-armor the genitalia, and to define it for the folks listening, armor refers to the unconscious guarding or self-protective patterns within the tissue and fascia of the pelvis and genitals that occur unconsciously as a very, very wise response the body has to self-preservation.
Yeah.
And I always say the best way to de-armor is conscious, present lovemaking, when you're moving at the pace that the body desires. So this goes back to the 8 pillars, right? Of learning how to slow down, how to attune and slow down enough to attune, but also attune enough to know when to slow down. Right?
It goes in both directions.
It goes in both directions. And, going back to extended lovemaking, I don't want to give the impression that it's some marathon experience. All it is really allowing the organic life force between 2 people to move and dance in the ways that it desires moment by moment.
Yeah.
And during that process, we're going to touch into unprocessed emotions and past physical or sexual traumas. And that's where the de-armoring happens, is when that's met with love and patience and understanding, then the tissues feel safe enough for the life force, for the arousal, the pleasure to come back online.
And, as someone who has the lived experience of moving from a very armored body to a fully alive body, years ago, I had a lovership where we really wouldn't ever go beyond kind of like in the arousal scale, a 5. My body just didn't actually go above that during that time. Yeah. But we would meet every week, and we would touch, and we would just luxuriate in low states of arousal, and that completely rewired my system. And now I'm like, my body is available to every single number and so much, but I needed to respect that for years.
Yeah.
And not push myself to a place where I could no longer be present with it or could no longer enjoy it.
Yeah. So there's something about like trusting the timing that it, like, you know, that it takes the time that it takes. And what you said before, Rahi, about the best de-armoring is like attuned, slow lovemaking. Ariel, you just described your direct experience of that. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I mean, I can say for myself, like, I know that in my body, how incredibly nourishing and expansive and healing and transformative when I first started my journey of conscious sexuality and sacred sexuality. This idea that sex was something more than just trying to get off, or in my young years, like making sure my partner got off and me being pleased enough with the experience and just like, okay, done, you know, like checked that box. And it is so, I mean, this is like taking me back to the early days right now. And it feels so yummy to remember what that slowing down did. And even now, you know, like when you speak about Ariel having the full range of numbers, it's like, something I love is like, yeah, get me to like a 7, 8, 9, but then I love to kind of back down into like a 5, 6 for a little while and like feel the sensations that, especially things that are more subtle in my own body that I can't track as well, if at all, when I'm also in that more dynamic and higher level of arousal with a partner. And it's not because there's a problem. You know, that's its own deliciousness. It's simply saying like my capacity to pay full attention to both. I haven't managed to split my attention that well. So it's like, there's almost a turn taking, right? Of like, oh, I'm going to pay attention to what's available to me at the 8 and right here in relation to my partner. And then I'm going to like back down into a 6 with myself and my own inner experience and savor the deliciousness of that. And I think what I'm describing is something a lot of people don't necessarily know is possible. So I love that you've created this course and this guidance to help folks. Can you talk a little more about the course, about Divine Union for Lovers? And if people are intrigued, like what it is that I mean, obviously you're covering things that we've spoken about today, but anything more you want to say about what that encompasses and what people might expect from it?
Yeah, thanks. Well, it covers everything that we've spoken about, but the foundation really is the 8 pillars of intimacy, because it really does guide and teach people how to self-attune and attune to not only their partner, but kind of the whole experience of lovemaking. And then, of course, you know, there's a lot of video demos of the one-way touch practices, you know, that we facilitate as sexological body workers. There's other one-way touch practices that we bring in, one called Body Awakening. There's erotic ecstatic massage. There's genital mapping, but they're all visual video demos, so on live bodies, so people can actually track and take home, or as they're watching at home, to understand, you know, how this can apply to their bodies and to their partnership. And then we really get into, you know, the extended lovemaking or the extended erotic connection practices that really cultivate that capacity to grow your you know, erotic container. And the other thing I feel compelled to mention is that pleasure scale of 0 to 10, as the two of you so beautifully point out in the conversation, it's relative to each individual body. There's no universal scale of 1 to 10. And so it's, you know, every human body has, you know, their 7, their 8, their 3. And then the more this erotic capacity evolves, you know, maybe it becomes, oh, this is actually 7.2 or 7.35. You know, it becomes more and more specific in that way.
Yeah. Nuance of it all.
Yeah. And then we also have in our course a solo path for people who aren't currently in a lovership, but do want to engage with the material. So we offer kind of alternatives to the practices on how to practice with yourself, and even for couples who take it together to practice on your own, because really the reality is these are all skills that we need to cultivate within ourselves before we can actually meet someone in this way.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think this goes without saying, but I want to just say it, have it on the record. I'm assuming that this material is just as well adapted to a body with a penis and a body with a vagina and a vulva. So orientation, body notwithstanding, divine union for lovers is for everybody.
Right. Whatever body you're in, whatever sexual orientation, however you like to have your relationships. Mm-hmm. It's really just about exploring the unique union of any lovers that come together in whatever body or orientation that you're in.
I love that. I mean, and what more could we really want? Other, like you just said it so succinctly right there. What is the unique union? That these two bodies in this present moment, when we're attuned and open and safe, like can actually create together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've put a lot of awareness and intention around is like the video demos, and it's like they're starting off points for people. They're kind of a basic framework for whatever bodies and configurations want to come together and discover their own practices, their own unique explorations of their erotic charge.
Yeah. And I mean, I think with so much that we teach and guide folks around, there is this take it and make it yours, right? Mm-hmm. Like you get to find, like, these are all templates and jumping off points, but they're not, this is the rigid standard way it must be. And that's where the creativity of this all comes in. I mean, because what is eroticism if not creative energy and creative expression? And it sounds like you're really giving people a lot of beautiful tools and guidance to feel confident in exploring that and getting creative for themselves.
Yeah. And create the foundation needed so that it can become like sexy, fun playtime again together. Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like the training wheels so that you can then go off on the mountain biking adventure. Really, because we all need a little support in the beginning. And for some of us, we might feel like we need and want that support for even longer, but it's all ultimately in service to more freedom.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I feel like this comes back to the spaciousness of our love labs, or the spaciousness that any kind of devoted, prioritized ritual time provides, because we want that time to be devoted to exploring the unknown and to expand beyond what we've experienced before. And that's what we're offering in the course. And that's the space we hold for ourselves.
I love it. I can't wait. I'm excited to check this course out. It sounds just so fantastic. Where can folks find you and find out more about you and about Divine Union for Lovers?
Yeah, so it's divineunionforlovers.com.
It's easy.
And my personal website is sacredmoonflower.com.
And mine is simply my name, rahichun.com.
Wonderful. And all of that is going to be linked in the show notes so that you can connect with Rahi and Ariel, who I am so grateful for. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. Thank you for the work that each of you has done for yourselves and the work that each of you does and the space that you hold. I really feel like we are walking very similar paths. And I know that this is in service to the more beautiful world that we want to be living in. So big bow of gratitude to you, and for those listening, to you as well. Thank you for the gift of your presence, your attention, for hanging in there with us. And if you got something out of this episode, it would mean the world to me if you went ahead and left a review, shared it, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future episodes. And I will be back with you next week.
Thank you so much.